question. Let's bring in Jorge Ventura now. He's a national correspondent for News Nation and our friend. Jorge, good to have you with us today.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me on.
Jorge, this seems like it's reached a boiling point for Democrat officials. Has something changed?
So nothing has changed. So obviously we have New York Mayor Eric Adams begging the Biden administration just for any type of help or relief. Massachusetts governor just recently declared a national emergency. I've been speaking to some sources in Denver. Denver actually might be declaring an emergency soon with the amount of Venezuelans arriving there. And the communities that are continue to be impacted in New York are the working class communities. We've been seeing protests of, where they're trying to move migrants into schools, into neighborhoods. Actually, I just did a report last month in Erie County, New York, where a couple of migrants committed sex crimes and where they were stationed in hotels were right across a residential neighborhood. And it's really reaching that boiling point. And from a political perspective, I just don't see why it doesn't make sense for Biden to at least help out his own colleagues on this issue. And right now, Vince, it's really seemed that strategy from Texas Governor Greg Abbott of sending migrants to these other cities has clearly worked. And I do remember when that busing program started, Abbott was receiving criticism from Republicans saying, hey, we're sending them deeper into our country. But I think what Abbott is doing is he has forced a national conversation. He also forces the media in New York City to have to cover this issue. And it seems whether you're on the left or right, everyone agrees this is just too much to handle.
Yes.
I believe New York right now is spending $8 million a day just in housing migrants, and that's going to reach the billions pretty soon.
Well, that money is going where Democrat mayors' mouths have been on this issue, because in New York City and Chicago and elsewhere, a lot of these mayors have said out loud, including Eric Adams when he was running for the job, that New York City is a sanctuary city, that it welcomes illegal migrants into the city and will not cooperate with federal officials looking to enforce immigration laws. I mean, isn't it the case that these lawmakers have very much set the stage for the influx they're now experiencing?
No, that's right. And I was just reading in the New York Post, there was one migrant in New York City who's been arrested 14 times, but because New York is a sanctuary city, they won't cooperate with ICE. I was actually speaking to a couple of sources in Chicago. If you walk into a Chicago police station, there's migrants scattered all over the floor. And actually, a lot of the black working class residents have been holding protests of their own, saying, why are we providing all of our taxpayer money for migrants? What are you doing for us? What are you doing for us, black Americans in the city? And, one thing the media likes to put out is they like to say the word asylum seeker, knowing that those asylum claims are not valid. 90% of the migrants that we are seeing are coming for economic reasons. So the system has essentially collapsed. Just recently, Vince, I did a story on a Haitian migrant who came in through Laredo, Texas last year illegally. He went to Ohio, and he crashed into a school bus, and it ended up killing an 11-year-old by the name of Aiden Clark. I mean, this issue has spiraled out of control. And what we are seeing now from Abbott is he's starting to send more of these buses actually to the city of Los Angeles. So now Los Angeles is going to start feeling that impact pretty soon.
So when Eric Adams gets up there and starts, spouting off about how upset he is about the circumstances, he's talking now in existential terms. He's saying that the city of New York is being destroyed. How can he ask for help from the federal government when he refuses to help the federal agency tasked with immigration enforcement?
Yeah, see, that's right. And what my sources on the ground continue to say is a lot of these migrants in New York are committing crimes inside of these hotels where they were staying, Roosevelt Hotel. Like I said, in Erie County, you had a couple of migrants committing sex crimes, but they refused to cooperate with ICE and to deport these migrants. So the Erie County officials with the New York governor were actually forced to actually call in the National Guard and to be stationed at hotels where these migrants are staying. And they're going to continue to come. And everyone is now feeling that impact. And now with the new school year started, I was actually speaking with some school officials in New York who says, we don't know what to do for this school year because we have to take in all these new migrant students. And the people that really have to pay for it are the Americans with their taxpayer money. So I've been speaking to a lot of New York folks from New York who say, hey, I've been voting Democrat or I'm Republican, but everyone is starting to see eye to eye on this issue. I think it was just a couple of days ago up in upstate New York where they bussed some migrants in, and you actually saw the residents rally and actually turn a bus around. So you're really seeing people just sick of what's going on. We're seeing New York Democrats now agree that something has to be done. And from a political, standpoint, I just don't understand why Biden is not stepping in. Like I said, even Massachusetts governor has already declared an emergency, has to send in the National Guard,
Yes.
and there's still more migrants on the way. And as we're seeing a new uptick in illegal crossings back again post Title 42.
Right. It is amazing. Meanwhile, there's a federal judge that according to a CBS headline, I want to understand what's really going on here because I feel like the media is not exactly telling the whole story. They say a judge has ordered Texas to remove floating border barriers, granting Biden administration request. Is that exactly right, Jorge Ventura? Because my impression was that the judge said that the barriers needed to be moved back towards the shoreline, not removed. What's the answer here?
So from the court documents that I got, the judge has ordered the state of Texas to remove those marine buoys by September 15th. We're talking about 1,000 feet buoys in Eagle Pass. And I just want to provide some context for the audience here. The reason why Texas put the buoys in that location in Eagle Pass in the Rio Grande, last year when I was reporting for the Daily Caller, it's that crossing point, it's the deadliest crossing point on the southern border. There was actually a span for about 45 to 60 days I was reporting on that they were actually averaging a drowning a day, meaning that American officials, they're in local county there in Eagle Pass, they would actually basically have to pull out these bodies and they would actually start burying them at the local cemetery to the point where the local cemetery ran out of room. The local sheriff there actually had to call Texas Governor Greg Abbott and he had ordered basically these freeze trailers to start storing the bodies. So it's an area where they're seeing a lot of deaths. So the reason why those buoys were placed there is just to prevent any more of those drownings. I was there just recently, Vince, in Eagle Pass, reporting there, and in the span of 2 days, they actually had to recover 4 bodies, including an infant. So that's the reason why Texas put him right there. And just to provide some context, we are talking about just 1,000 feet buoy, so it's less than 1% of the border even covered.
Right.
But it's a situation that Texas really is at the point where they have to use all the resources. The Texas State Troopers are really not meant to be Border Patrol agents, but essentially that's what they are. And if it wasn't for the Texas State Troopers actually blocking migrants from crossing, we would actually see more drownings right now.
Man. Well, I want to quote something, though, for some clarification on where these buoys are going, because there's a footnote here from Judge David Allen Ezra. In the ruling, he says this, quote, "The court is directing that the buoy barrier be moved from the main waters of the Rio Grande River to the river bank rather than removal entirely from the river, so that the barrier does not impede or impair in any way navigation by airboats or other shallow draft craft along the Rio Grande River." So the judge here, I'd say, Julio is being... Jorge, my God. Your buddy Julio, sometimes that comes out. The judge here is saying move the buoys to the shoreline, but don't remove them entirely.
Yeah, and I mean, that really won't do anything. I mean, if by just having them on the riverbanks, you're not going to stop, any more drownings. So this has become a big deal over something that's, like I said, it's just 1,000 feet. Even Mexico was actually thinking about filing their own lawsuit against Texas Governor Greg Abbott. And essentially, when I'm down there in person, Texas is basically at that breaking point. They're trying to do everything they can to stop these illegal crossings. So, you have Texas State Troopers there. You have those huge barricades, a lot of concertina wire to try to stop those migrants. It's actually interesting, Vince. So when you're down there, you actually have Texas State Troopers blocking migrants from crossing illegally. So what the migrants do is they actually look for Border Patrol agents because the Border Patrol agents actually let them in onto American soil. The huge issue with this is they're basically deterring the mission of Texas State Troopers of stopping illegal crossings. Border Patrol agents are actually allowing these illegal crossings in. Now, under the Trump administration, if you reach American soil, obviously you have to be apprehended by Border Patrol, but you would be immediately deported because of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. Under Biden, as soon as you make it on American soil and you're apprehended, you're actually on a catch or release. And majority of migrants that I speak to are released with the NTA, notice to appear in court. The issue with that is majority of those migrants don't show up to that court case. And I've actually spoken to migrants, and I've seen this in person in documents, won't even have a court case till 2027.
So at that point, they've just been here forever. They've had a couple babies. It's like, what are we doing as a country? Finally, Jorge Ventura, as you talk to people who are illegally immigrating into our country, how confident are they that they will stay here?
Oh, I mean, they're 100% confident. The issue is because at this point now in the process is they now know a family or friend who have already crossed illegally and are in the U.S. So essentially they just follow that same system. Their thinking is as soon as I make it to American soil, I want to approach Border Patrol, either the Border Patrol agents will release me with an NTA or notice to appear, and which they are right. I mean, that essentially is the system, and right now we're seeing those family units starting to come in again. And actually, what's interesting is because the Texas State Troopers have been successfully blocking migrants from coming, now all that traffic has moved into the Tucson sector. And the Tucson sector is more known for the gotaways. So that's where you see more of the drug smugglers, folks who do not want to be apprehended. So Border Patrol agents in Arizona say, hey, we don't even have the infrastructure to deal with this massive crowds that are now coming into the Tucson sector. So now they're being released with NTAs and are moving into the country. Majority of these migrants are still heading to New York. And like I said, they will not have a court case for, years to come.
Jorge Ventura, again, national correspondent for News Nation, just one of the best in the whole country at actually reporting on our border crisis. Jorge, as always, I'm so glad to have you as a friend and as an expert on this very important subject. Thank you, Jorge. Nice to talk to you today.